Human history becomes more and more raised between education and catastrophe. These words of Herbert George Wells resonate in my head ever since I read his novel Time Machine. So we chose the path of education. Hi, my name is Damian Urbańczyk, and in this episode of Checkout Time, I'm going to guide you through almost 3 centuries of history of one of my favorite regions, Mazovia. Warsaw, the capital of the Mazovia district and the capital of Poland, is full of people who came here from different parts of Poland, different parts of Europe, or even the world. And soon they became a part of our society. And that was the case of Kurpie Białe. Who are they?
The term Kurpie Białe has been used in the Biała forest region since the 18th century. During that time, due to various disasters, these lands became depopulated. The bishops who had managed this area since the 13th century brought in Kurpie Zielone. The Kurpie Zielone come from the Zielona forest, which is on the other side of the Bug River. Mazovians had lived here since at least the 6th century, and their culture mixed with that of the newly arrived Kurpie Zielone. This blending of cultures led to the emergence of the Kurpie Białe, so it is a fusion of both cultures.
Że tak powiem, kultury Kurpi Zielonych i Kurpi Białych.
The bishop sought to attract the best beekeepers, as the Kurpie Zielone were renowned for their exceptional beekeeping skills, even though there were already beekeepers in the Biała forest. It's also worth noting that the Zielona forest belonged to the king, while the Biała forest was under the control of the bishops, which led to distinct differences between the two regions.
Throughout those centuries, there have been so many things that happened here. So many nations invaded Poland, the Swedes, the Russians, the Germans. So many kings were elected and so many kings died. But the life of common people carried on.
Under foreign rule, people continued living much as they had before, only their rulers changed. Life remained modest.
The
bishops of Płock were known to be wealthy enough that they did not have to exploit the local peasants as harshly, as they already owned vast lands and could easily amass wealth. In fact, peasants from other areas sometimes fled to the Biała forest because life there was comparatively better.
I have been living in Warsaw for over 25 years, so I thought that the Mazovia region keeps no secrets from me. But I have been proven wrong, because the more I search, the more I find. Let me unravel a story of the place, which right now is called Alexandrinum Palace, but once was owned by the family of Stanisław August Poniatowski, the last king of Poland, and his illegitimate child Stanisław Grabowski. For us, people living in the 21st century, stories about tsars and kings may seem like distant fables or even fairy tales. But they are in fact a big part of the history of Mazovia and the entire Poland. And this estate, although it has changed its appearance throughout centuries, remembers them very well. The Alexandrinum Palace inherited its name after Tsar Alexander I, who used to be a guest here. What was the main idea of creating and bringing back to life the historical spaces of the palace and making them accessible for the people? Was it more business or more passion-related?
We wanted to recreate and restore to our public space objects that have become part of history. Those long-forgotten structures seem to belong entirely to the past. Modern palaces can only survive if they serve as museums or hotels. Museums function as places of remembrance while hotels remain alive. That's why this building was repurposed as a hotel.
The House of Romanov, or the Romanov dynasty, to which Tsar Alexander I belonged, were rulers of Russia from 1613 till 1917. They were famous for their lavish feasts. So this Alexandrian hall might be an impression of the current owner, reflecting their love for conspicuous luxury.
Our new free market reality doesn't always have to be seen as a world solely for those who make money. Of course, financial resources are necessary for such a project to be viable and sustainable, which is not an easy task. But on the other hand, if this endeavor provides meaningful aesthetic experiences to those who interact with it in any way, then what we aim to achieve has real value. And that, ultimately, is what we were striving for.
Frank Gehry, one of the most brilliant architects, by the way, of Polish descent, once said that architecture should speak of its time and place, but yearn for timelessness. And walking around this property, I'm a bit conflicted, because on one hand, I have this incredible palace, reflecting the architectural ideas of the 19th century, and on the other, I have this very brand new building erected in the same manner. But to be quite frank, I really do appreciate this architectural coherence. So let's talk more about the history of this place. This area became property of the family of Stanisław August Poniatowski, and later it was owned by his natural son, Stanisław Grabowski. How did it all begin?
This was a family whose time was unique and unrepeatable. Stanisław Grabowski was the illegitimate son of King Stanisław August Poniatowski. He benefited greatly from his status in his political career. He served as the Minister of Public Enlightenment and Religious Affairs of the Congress Kingdom of Poland. He settled here, and he is the most significant spirit of this place. A spirit we have tried to evoke.
The great use of life is to spend it for something that will outlast it. And I think that it perfectly sums up the approach of Stanisław Grabowski, a man who 2 centuries ago created this place, and Professor Modzelewski, who brought it back to life. And I find it extremely heartwarming that there are still people who create things and places not only for themselves, but also for the future generations. Many famous guests were present in this estate. Could we name a few?
Let me start by pointing out specific locations. There were once two great oaks here, but now only one remains. These trees were among the oldest in this part of Poland, each several centuries old. One was named Alexander and the other Konstanty. The one that remains is Konstanty, named after none other than Prince Konstanty, our historical demon. There is a story that Tsar Alexander I visited this place twice. He claimed to be visiting his cousin. Royal families considered one another cousins, so it is likely that he also visited Stanisław Grabowski, not only as his subordinate minister, since minister means servant in Latin, but also as his relative.
Within the park, we have an enormous, over 500 years old oak, Konstanty, named after Konstantin Pavlovich, the brother of the Tsar Alexander I. If we take 500 years literally, it means that it remembers the times when the Jagiellonian dynasty ruled Poland. For example, the times of the Prussian homage. History is written by winners, but history was mainly written by men. Are there any women figures which are associated with this place?
A key figure in the life of Stanisław August Poniatowski and the mother of Stanisław Grabowski was the famous Elżbieta Grabowska, known as Grabula. She was a formidable personality with a complex legacy from that era. Some even called her the misfortune of King Stanisław August Poniatowski's life.
In 1854, Alexandre Dumas wrote in one of his novels, The Mohicans of Paris, a very well-known and yet a very sexist phrase, "Cherchez la femme," look for a woman, meaning that whatever the problem around the world may be, a woman is most probably the cause. Here, in the Palace Alexandrinum, women are appreciated, because looking around you can see their figures, stages and silhouettes around. I couldn't help but notice different women figures and silhouettes in the palace. What was the idea behind it?
Let me put it this way. I always wanted to be a sculptor. A series of circumstances ultimately led me down a different path, but I still wanted to preserve the artistic vision that someone once passed on to me. Sculpture can be a part of our everyday lives. As we walk down a corridor, we can pass by sculptures that remain permanently in place. We move on, but they stay.
The world around us changes at the proverbial speed of light. So from time to time, it is good to visit places where time stands still or even goes back. Despite the fact that sometimes this journey in time means reliving a very difficult history of Poland, like in the place I'm going to show you next. The name of the Poniatowski family was important not only for the Alexandrinum Palace or Mazovia, but the entire Poland. During the reign of Stanisław August Poniatowski, Poland lost its freedom for 123 years. Right now, we are walking in front of a gate which bears the name of his nephew, Józef Poniatowski. And it used to be one of the two defense gates in the fortress of Modlin. The fortress of Modlin for so many years was a key defense point in Poland.
On December 1st, 1806, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, who was in Poznan at the time, celebrating his double victory over the Prussians, issued an order to build in this beautiful, yet highly strategic location, storage facilities here. I'm not sure if there is another place in Poland where four rivers meet. In the 19th century, there were almost no land roads in this area. The goal was to transport the supplies needed for the Grand Army via waterways.
Is it true that defenders of this fortress didn't know the word surrender?
The fortress was besieged 4 times in its history, and no one ever managed to capture it. In 1813, we defended the fortress for nearly a year. In December, after Napoleon was ultimately defeated at the Battle of the Nations near Leipzig, the fortress was surrendered because defending it no longer made sense. During the November uprising in 1831, we held the fortress as long as the uprising lasted. In 1915, the Russians defended it against the Germans, and the Germans also didn't manage to take it. Finally, the bloodiest and most difficult siege for us, the Poles, came in 1939. Around 20,000 Polish soldiers defended the fortress against 70,000 German troops, nearly 3 army corps, and yet the Germans did not capture the fortress.
The Mazovia region existed from the Middle Ages till the partitions of Poland. In 1793 and 1795, it got swallowed by the Kingdom of Prussia and by Austria. From 1918, it has become the part of then resurrected Poland. And this building has always been a pivotal point in the defense of not only Mazovia, not only Poland, but entire Europe. So many stories embedded in these walls, which can be right now best reflected in the words of our anthem. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła, póki my żyjemy, which means Poland has not perished yet as long as we live. If it hadn't been for the fortress of Modlin, the fate of not only Poland but entire Europe would have been completely different.
Since 1806, everything that has happened in Poland and Europe is reflected here in Modlin, like in a mirror. Wars, uprisings, they all left their mark. By studying the history of Modlin, we simultaneously observe the history of Europe and, most importantly, of Poland.
The fortress of Modlin served its purpose, defending and protecting these lands so that the future generations could live in a free country. And I know people who do the same thing, but with the cultural heritage of this region. Although for many foreign tourists coming to Poland and looking at people living here, our country may seem quite homogeneous, thinking that they couldn't be further from the truth. Because every region is filled with various ethnographical groups, each of them boiling with different traditions, customs and stories. We arrived to Pniewo, which is 70 kilometers away from Warsaw, our capital, and yet we are entering a totally different world. Follow me. I actually cannot believe that I'm here, because this is the essence of the Białe Kurpie world. And what is this tradition about?
Everything related to life here, even cuisine, is something we can be proud of. Our white kurpie embroidery has also been included on the UNESCO list, but it's very labor-intensive.
I can see those impressive embroideries, Easter eggs, beautiful flowers, but what I find really tempting and alluring is the smell of these things. What are these?
These are Pfeffernuche,
Pfeffernuche?
a name derived from a German word for pepper. When Mum baked bread and the oven was still warm, she would take out the bread and place the Pfeffernuche on baking trays. Then we would go to the neighbors and we would play.
But you said play? They say you shouldn't play with food.
You had to play because there was nothing else to do, so you would take an even number in one hand and an odd number in the other hand. This game was called sedno licho.
So, are we gonna play?
Let's play.
So I need to cover my eyes in order not to cheat?
I already took some.
Okay. Which one is sedno, which one is licho?
Sedno is even, licho is odd.
I'm gonna go with sedno here. No, this sedno here and sedno here.
You guessed right.
Ah!
But here you didn't.
You both have had a chance to observe changes in your culture. And would you say that kurpie culture will survive, will strive?
Over these 20 years, we've been trying to pass on knowledge about the culture of the white kurpie. And we are starting to slowly see some effects, right? Because the girls are starting to embroider, they are starting to make decorations, and they see the value in it, that it's important, that it matters. They don't go for strange artificial lace patterns. They embroider their own blouses, even ones like these. It's a bit like this interest has been sparked, but I'm not sure if enough. We are lucky to have this kurpie forge here, so we try to recreate all these things. As long as we're alive, we try to sustain and pass on the culture. After that, I don't know.
Having you both sitting in front of me, I'm so sure that the culture of kurpie, armed in the knowledge of people like yourselves, is safe. Even though I live my everyday life in Warsaw, this trip has reminded me that Mazovia is a region of incredible history and unbelievable people who will go to great lengths to protect their heritage and freedom. And us, let's not forget that the greatest heritage one can pass on to one's children and grandchildren is not money nor the material things accumulated in life, but the heritage of character and faith. Faith in a better world. See you next time.